She didn't arrive with medals or stories etched into uniforms. Just a soft gaze, a steady hand, and a map no one else bothered to carry. In a place built for noise and orders, she moved with silence and purpose. Some called her lost, others unfit. But kindness doesn't shout, and strength sometimes hides in the quietest gestures. This is the story of Evelyn Shaw, a woman forgotten by history, yet remembered by those she saved. If you believe simplicity can still change the world, stay. Subscribe for stories that matter. She always kept it folded neatly tucked into the front pocket of her worn-out coat, a creased old paper map. Why not use GPS? They chuckled. She didn't answer, but if you looked closely, you'd notice how her fingers traced the lines like memory. Evelyn Shaw never claimed to know more than anyone. She didn't speak of where she'd been, didn't try to impress, but when others hesitated, she moved, like someone who'd once been lost, and never wanted others to feel that way again. There was something about the way she stood still but present, the way she listened without interrupting. Some thought it was just politeness. Others began to sense it was something deeper, as if she wasn't here to prove herself. She was here because something had brought her back. Most people didn't notice her silence. It was easy to overlook a woman who rarely spoke, especially in a place where voices were loud and orders louder. But silence can mean many things. Sometimes it's fear, sometimes shame, and sometimes it's a kind of knowing. Evelyn's silence wasn't hollow. It felt like a space she was keeping open. During training, others shouted commands, made jokes, tried to impress. She didn't interrupt. She simply watched, not in judgment, but as if she was waiting. For the moment, it might matter. Someone once asked, "Aren't you too quiet for this kind of life?" She smiled, just barely, and replied, "Maybe." Or maybe I've just already said what mattered long ago. No one knew what that meant. But from that day on, they listened a little more closely when she did speak. It started small, a sideways glance in the mess hall, a half-whispered joke as she passed by. "Grandma's joining the squad now. Bet she bakes cookies better than she shoots." They didn't mean it cruelly, not all of them. Some were just trying to be funny, others unsure how to deal with what they didn't understand. Evelyn never reacted. Not once, but silence again doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. One afternoon, she sat quietly by the window letting the sun warm her hands. Someone passed behind her and muttered, "She doesn't belong here." She didn't turn around, just gently folded the corner of the map in her lap like sealing away a part of herself. And maybe you felt that too. That quiet ache of being misunderstood not because of who you are, but because of who they think you're not. The jokes faded when they watched her shoot. Not because she boasted. She never did. She just stepped up to the firing line, held the rifle like it was a familiar memory, not a weapon, but an old friend. Others adjusted their grip, shuffled their stance, exhaled too quickly. Evelyn didn't move more than she needed. 5 shots, one ragged hole, center mass. Someone whispered, "Lucky grouping." She didn't respond, just cleaned her rifle slowly with a cloth she brought from home, not military issue but soft cotton worn at the edges. Like she'd done this, not once but 1,000 times before, and maybe she had. But when someone asked how she learned to shoot like that, she looked down for a moment and quietly said, "I really don't remember." Don't. His name was Calloway. Just another recruit, young quiet, with hands that still bore calluses from farm tools. He didn't say much either. Maybe that's why he noticed. While others dismissed Evelyn, he watched. Not to judge, not even to understand. Just to see. The way she handled her weapon, not like she was taught it, but like it had taught her. The way she sat alone at lunch, never checking her phone, just folding napkins with patient fingers like she was waiting for someone who never came. Calloway didn't ask questions, but something in him recognized something in her, a steadiness, a kind of sadness that didn't beg for attention but stayed with you once you saw it. And maybe you've known someone like that, or maybe you've been that someone. It happened during a standard drill obstacle course timed sprint basic footwork. Everyone moved like rookies. Some too eager, others too tired. Evelyn didn't move quickly, but she moved right. She ducked under the beams with an economy of motion, no wasted steps, no flinches. At the rope wall, while others stumbled with knots, she climbed like she'd done it in the dark. Bare hands, steady, pull eyes forward. One of the instructors muttered, "That's not beginner form." Evelyn just exhaled through her nose, almost surprised at herself, and Calloway, watching from the sidelines, saw it too, the slight shift in her face. Not pride, not confusion, just a flicker of something half-remembered, like a melody that returns when no one's humming, as if her body remembered a life her mind had let go. By the third week, the tone had changed. They still whispered, but now the jokes had faded. In their place, questions. "You think she's done this before? Did she serve? Maybe under a different name? No one knew. No one could find a past." Her file was paper thin. Too thin. A few of them began to watch her differently, not with amusement anymore, but with caution. It wasn't fear, not yet. But when someone moves like they've seen real danger, you start to wonder if they're carrying something the rest of you aren't ready for. Evelyn never explained. She just folded laundry slower than the others and sat in the quiet corners like she was keeping something from falling apart. And maybe she was. Calloway didn't ask the same questions. He didn't care what was missing in her file. What he noticed were the things most people missed, like how she always paused for a second before speaking as if checking the weight of her words, or how she folded her sleeves the exact same way every morning like it mattered more than it seemed. He once saw her staring out at the drill yard, not like she was lost, but like she was looking for someone who never came back. There was a steadiness in her stillness, and sometimes steadiness says more than 100 shouted orders ever could. Calloway didn't say it out loud, but inside he started to think, maybe she's not here to learn. Maybe she's here because something in her refused to forget. It was just a drill, a controlled, timed simulation. A mock ambush, all for training. The enemy popped out from behind the sandbags, rifles loaded with blanks, and the squad froze for half a second too long. Everyone except Evelyn. She dropped low, rolled behind cover, and in one seamless move signaled a retreat path with hand gestures no one else recognized. Not from this camp. Not from this era. After the drill, an instructor frowned. "Who taught you that response?" Evelyn looked down at her hands, still open, still trembling slightly. "I didn't know I did that." Her voice was soft. Not proud, not defensive, just honest. And in that pause, Calloway saw it again, that flicker, like a candle remembering the match that lit it. Instructors filed their daily reports, mostly routine. But one entry caught someone's attention. Candidate Shaw displays advanced reflexive behavior inconsistent with her file. The words weren't dramatic, just different. A week later, another note. Untrained signal communication, effective field positioning, non-standard evasive maneuvers. The reports made their way up not because she broke protocol, but because she followed none, and still passed every test. In a quiet office, Colonel Mathis scanned her profile, his brow furrowed. Age, 43. Prior service. None documented. Then, where he murmured, "Did she learn to move like that?" he looked again at her photo. Eyes, calm, face, unreadable. And for the first time, the system hesitated. Because sometimes, when something doesn't fit the data, it's not a flaw. It's a warning. At night, when the others were asleep, Evelyn stayed awake. Not restless, just unsettled. In the corner of her bunk, under the soft hum of the overhead light, she'd pull out a napkin or a scrap of notebook paper and begin to draw. Not pictures, not exactly. Symbols. Sharp angles overlapping circles, coded lines that curved in patterns even she couldn't name. Sometimes she'd stop midway, her pen hovering, like her hand remembered something her mind refused to finish. Calloway saw them once. She didn't notice, but he did. "What are those?" he whispered the next day. Evelyn looked at her hands. "I don't know," she said, almost like she was asking herself. Then after a pause, "But they feel familiar." It was just a live fire simulation. Controlled, measured, until Private Lynn slipped and panic spiraled faster than any instructor could intervene. He landed wrong. Shoulder dislocated, breathing short. The others froze. One instructor yelled, "Medic inbound." But Evelyn didn't wait. She was beside him in 2 steps, her hands steady, her voice low. "Don't move. Look at me. Breathe with me." Then one swift motion, a clean reset of the joint. No theatrics, no hesitation. Lynn gasped, then stilled. Evelyn took his pulse, checked his pupils. "You're okay. It's over." The medic arrived seconds later, and just stared. "Where'd you learn that?" Evelyn looked up. I don't remember, but in her eyes was that same flicker again, a skill long buried that still remembered why it existed. No one said anything that day, but the silence around Evelyn wasn't the same. It wasn't laced with doubt or wrapped in smirks. It was quieter, more observant. In the mess hall, no one offered fake politeness, but Calloway noticed people stopped talking over her. On the training ground, when she adjusted her stance, a few followed. Not because they were told to, but because they saw it worked. And the instructors. They still barked orders, still clung to routine. But now, one or two paused when Evelyn moved, as if for the first time they were wondering, what if she's not behind the curve, but ahead of something we've forgotten how to see? They'd failed this simulation 3 times. Breach and secure, a routine test on paper, but each time the squad scattered, rushed, got caught in the bottleneck. This time, no one said Evelyn should lead. But when the exercise began, she moved first not toward the obvious point, but through the brush circling wide silent as dusk. Calloway followed. Then Lynn. Not because she asked, but because it felt right. She marked a side path with 2 sticks, a simple shape, a signal. The others noticed and pivoted. The breach was clean. No shouting, no scrambling. When the exercise ended, the instructor stared at the playback footage. Who gave that order? No one answered. Evelyn was already kneeling, tying her boot, like it was just another step forward. When the footage was reviewed, most instructors leaned back impressed. A few even chuckled. That old girl's got instincts. But one man didn't smile. He wasn't part of the training unit. No rank on his shirt. Just a worn notebook, a quiet presence in the back corner of the observation deck. When Evelyn marked those sticks, his pen stopped mid-air. Not in confusion, in recognition. Later that evening, as the base lights flickered to night mode, he stood outside her quarters. Didn't knock, didn't say a word. Just stared at the number on the door. Then quietly said to no one in particular, "I thought we buried you in Ramadi." His voice didn't shake, but his eyes held something between relief and fear. The next morning, Evelyn noticed him. Not because he stood out, but because he didn't. Same plain notebook, same silent eyes. But when she passed him, he didn't glance away like the others. He looked straight at her, as if he already knew where she had been. And in that split second, something inside Evelyn stilled. Her heart didn't race, but her breath caught, like a scent from another life had drifted by. She didn't recognize him, not really, but the way he held the notebook, the way his fingers tapped once, twice, then paused. Something in her chest tightened. Later that night, she sat in the dark, whispering a name she didn't understand, Gideon. That evening, the rec room was mostly empty. A few soldiers played cards, a quiet TV murmured in the background. Evelyn wasn't there to socialize. She came for the quiet. For the chessboard tucked in the corner, an old habit she didn't remember learning, but her hands moved the pieces with practiced ease. Then she saw it. A notebook, the one the silent man had carried, forgotten, left open on the side table. She shouldn't have looked, but her eyes didn't ask permission. Tucked inside its pages was a black and white photo, worn, faded. 4 soldiers, 3 men, 1 woman. Her face turned half away, but the posture, the hands folded just so. Her. Evelyn didn't breathe. And in that stillness, a word, not a memory, just a word fell into place like a stone in her chest, Spectre. She found him near the mess hall. Same quiet stance, same notebook now back in his hand. Evelyn didn't ask why he left it behind. And he didn't ask why she looked inside. There was just a silence between them, thick as sand after rain. Finally, he spoke. "Do you still hum when you disarm a tripwire?" Evelyn blinked. Her lips parted, but no words came. "You used to," he continued. "Always the same tune. Never knew what it was." Evelyn's throat tightened. She hadn't hummed in years, but last week during a training rig check, someone had asked what that little melody was. She said she didn't notice. Now she wondered. What else had her hands remembered long before her mind did? What was the song? Evelyn asked the question not with urgency, but with the kind of softness people use when asking about someone long gone. Gideon smiled barely. No one ever knew, but you hummed it like it had always been yours. He paused as if walking back through memory. You used to say, "When hands are steady, the heart remembers." Evelyn looked down at her palms. Scarred, calloused, steady. And suddenly she did remember something, not a moment but a feeling. A night in the middle of nowhere. The dull click of metal. The scent of dust and oil And that tune, humming beneath breath not to soothe herself, but to calm the man beside her whose hands never stopped shaking. She looked up. Gideon didn't need to say it. He remembered, too. That night, Evelyn sat on her bunk longer than usual. The others had already turned in. Her fingers traced the seam of her gloves, the standard-issue pair every recruit received. But tonight, they felt wrong. Not in size, but in memory. She could feel a different texture. Thick, sticky, blood, but not her own. It came in a flash, not a memory, more like a blink through another life. A white wall. Bright, sterile. A man slumped against it, his uniform soaked. Her own hands steady clinical pressing into his wound. Not with panic, not with fear, but with practiced precision. She didn't know his name, but her hands. They remembered trying to keep him alive even when her eyes already knew it was too late. The next morning, Evelyn found Gideon again, this time by the perimeter fence where the desert meets the wind. She didn't wait for a smile. Or a nod. Was there ever... A unit called Spectre Gideon didn't flinch. He didn't answer right away either. Instead, he looked toward the open stretch of land like the horizon might offer safer words. There were rumors, he said slowly. Ghost teams, off books, no IDs, no medals, no graves. Evelyn listened not with fear but with a strange stillness. And did they ever leave? Gideon turned to her, his voice quiet, nearly breaking. No, they disappeared. Not because they died, but because someone needed to believe. They never existed. Evelyn closed her eyes and whispered, "Maybe I didn't leave either." Leave. The alert came in just before dawn. A supply drone had crashed on the ridge half a mile off base right at the border of training grounds. A minor incident. But protocol demanded a recovery team. Evelyn was assigned to observe, nothing more. But 20 minutes in the radio cracked with panic, one of the young cadets had slipped caught between loose shale and a metal spar. Before the sergeant could speak, before anyone could react, Evelyn was already running. Not fast, not reckless. Precise. Calculated. Her steps avoided every loose patch. Her stance, low weight, shifted with every step like she'd been trained in terrain no textbook could teach. She reached the cadet in seconds, stabilized the injury, and signaled for a line using hand signs no one had taught this base in 20 years. From the ridge, someone was watching, and their breath caught. After the rescue, the base was quiet again. The sun had fully risen, painting the horizon in soft gold. Evelyn sat outside, silently cleaning the dirt from her boots, just as she always did. But this time, someone was watching, and not just in awe. Private Jonah Ellis, barely 21. The same one whose leg Evelyn had just splinted. He stood nearby, helmet still on gaze, fixed on her hands. "You weren't trained here, were you?" Evelyn looked up, a flicker of something unreadable passing through her eyes. "Does it matter?" Jonah hesitated, then shook his head. "No, ma'am, it doesn't. But I didn't know someone could move like that unless they'd seen things, done things." Evelyn said nothing, but she gave him a quiet nod, the kind only warriors share when words are both too much and not enough. It started with a quiet request. "Ma'am, would you show us how you did that ridge approach?" It wasn't from the commanding officer, not an order, just Jonah. And then another voice joined in, then another. Evelyn hesitated, not because she didn't know how to teach, but because she wasn't sure she was ready to be seen. But she nodded. "All right, but you'll have to unlearn a few things first." They met on the north field. No gear, no rank, just bodies, movement, listening to the ground. She didn't bark orders, she guided, like showing someone how to feel the rhythm of a heartbeat, not just measure it. They stumbled at first, laughed, fumbled, but by the end, they weren't just mimicking steps, they were moving with her. And for a brief moment, it didn't feel like training. It felt like inheritance. Colonel Harlan didn't often walk the fields at dusk, but that evening he did. From the observation path above the north field, he watched them, a circle of soldiers laughing softly, mimicking hand signals like kids learning a secret language. And at the center, Evelyn. Not commanding, just present. He didn't interrupt, didn't salute. He waited until she was alone, folding a faded scarf she'd used to demonstrate blindfolded awareness drills. "Where'd you learn that Evelyn didn't look up? Which part, sir?" "The part where they listened to you without fear." A long pause. "I didn't teach that," she said gently. "I earned it. Somewhere no one writes about." Harlan didn't press further, but as he turned to go, he whispered to himself, She's not one of ours, but maybe she should have been. It happened during a routine live fire simulation, the kind they ran every week. Predictable, safe on paper, but things rarely go as planned. A faulty smoke charge, a sudden gust of wind, and Private Marsh Young Eager wandered just a few feet too far off the safety line. Evelyn saw it before anyone else did. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was memory. Without a word, she sprinted. Not the fastest run, not flashy, but precise, like she knew the trajectory of panic before it formed. She tackled Marsh low, her arm shielding his neck as the charge went off a few yards away, just a pop, but enough shrapnel to leave a scar. Silence, then breath, and someone whispered, "How did she know?" No one answered, but in every glance that followed there was something new: trust. That night the barracks were quiet, but not everyone slept. Private Darren Lynn, the one with the sketchpad always tucked under his bunk, the one who noticed small things, like how Evelyn never faced doors directly, or how her fingers twitched when someone clicked a pen too fast. He couldn't sleep, so he opened his notebook, not the one with drills or meal plans, the other one filled with names, shapes, and theories. He turned to a page he had marked weeks ago, Evie S. Below it, a faint drawing of a tattoo, a shape like a ghost fading. He had seen it just once when her sleeve rode up. Tonight he typed that shape into an old military symbol database. The result, classified. Special Recon Tier 0. Designation Spectre. Darren sat back and whispered, "Who are you, Evelyn?" It came without warning. A blackout in Sector D. Comms down. Systems scrambled. They were mid-drill, but the panic was real. Some thought it was a test. Others weren't so sure. Lights flickered. A low hum filled the air too steady to be power failure. Officers froze, waiting for command. But the radios stayed silent. Evelyn stood up. No shouting, no orders, just calm. She walked to the central panel and rerouted the auxiliary feed manually. Her fingers moved like they remembered something old. "Ma'am, that's off limits?" Darren's voice cut through. Let her. Others watched. No protests, no hesitation. In that moment, no one needed rank, just trust. And when the light snapped back on and the alarm silenced, no one clapped. But they all looked at her, like they finally saw her. That evening, long after drills had ended, Evelyn stood alone in the quiet hallway near the supply room. The light above her flickered soft golden like memory. From the pocket of her worn-out coat she pulled out the same creased paper map, the one she'd carried since day one, folded hidden, almost forgotten. But tonight she didn't tuck it away. Instead, she smoothed its corners, pressed out the folds with careful hands, and pinned it to the corkboard. Not to navigate, not for others, but to remember. A young cadet paused nearby, watched her in silence, then softly asked, "Ma'am, does it mean you found your way?" Evelyn didn't turn right away. She just smiled, faintly, like a person who had wandered far and finally come home. "Maybe I did," she whispered. "Or maybe the way found me." And as she walked away, the map fluttered gently in the hallway breeze, no longer folded, no longer hidden. Just there, like the quiet kind of truth. If this quiet strength touched something in you, you're not alone. Subscribe to Kind Woman Stories for more tales of gentle courage, quiet resilience, and the women who change the world without needing to raise their voice.